Hey, it's Bobby Bones with some exciting news. Open booking is here for the Top Shelf Country Cruise, setting sail February 2026 aboard the luxurious Celebrity Reflection. Spots are filling up fast, so book your stateroom today or sign up to become a lineup insider to receive the final lineup 48 hours prior to the public. Don't miss your chance to make February 2026 unforgettable. Visit TopShelfCountryCruise.com. That's TopShelfCountryCruise.com.
Lowe's knows that free is just better. That's why MyLowe's Rewards is free to join. As a member, you earn points towards MyLowe's money on eligible purchases, get exclusive free gifts, and earn free shipping at Silver Key status, all on top of weekly member-only deals. Don't wait. Join MyLowe's Rewards for free today and start saving more. Lowe's, we help, you save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
But then the tube, it locks, right? So you keep one, maybe two kids max in the tube. Like if you push real hard, so you can have some alone time. That's the thing you need.
I don't think the fact that it's a tube really changes the situation, though, Tom. I think it's...
Oh, it changes it. Believe me. That's a game changer.
How do they breathe? Right.
I know the kids carefully, shallowly, whatever.
Wow. What?
Good evening, gentlemen.
What? Oh, Eli, what is this? What's going on?
My shenanigans. This week's episode.
Oh,
Bay of Pigs found a bunch of...
No. The Bay of Pigs was an attempted coup in Cuba. It has nothing to do with pigs.
Oh, it doesn't?
It does not.
Not at all. I know that. How do I know that?
Well, my pig guy is a dick about refunds. So, if there's an angle that we can make this work with, I really need us to...
No, there's literally no angle. No. What?
Nope.
Hey, question. Did you buy a giant cake?
Oh,
as part of this?
Yeah, I did. But whatever you do, don't try to... Surprise!
Got it. That's a good one.
Gotta say, I like the misdirection on this. This is...
Right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't know.
Did you say sow prize? Sow prize?
I did.
Man.
I did. Sow.
Much respect, bro.
It was a great pun.
Bravo.
Really good pun.
His blood is funny.
Hello and welcome to Citation Needed, podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we are experts because it's the internet and that's how it works now. I'm Cecil and I'll be commanding this Special Forces mission. So let's introduce the first squad, the Fighting Follicles, member of the 101st Airborne Division, Eli, Noah, and Tom.
Okay, you laugh, Cecil, but while everyone else is stuck at home alone, I'm making new friends out of beard hair every single day.
Tracks.
Okay. Yeah, I will say, not everybody's tough enough to withstand the training it takes to make the cut.
Oh, it's like they're coming at you from different directions on that one.
So much shit on so much tits.
So good. So good. God, it's like overachieving.
Absolutely not.
Man, the oil in my beard, it used to be worth something, Now it's like about $5 a barrel. Actually, it's about 503 today.
There's one more person left to introduce the man with the high-pitched laugh and a proud member of Squeal Team 6, Keith.
They call me Shrill Sergeant Cecil. Shrill means happy.
Folks, the boredom defense budget's getting low here. And we don't have a Senate full of hawks to just write us a blank check. So becoming a patron in these trying times is more important than ever. If you'd like to learn how to become a patron, be sure to stick around till the end of the show. And with that out of the way, tell us, Heath, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event will we be talking about today?
We're going to be talking about the Bay of Pigs invasion.
I know better than to jump the gun and just ask what the topic is with your essay. So tell me, Noah, what tangential event 500 years earlier would you like to start with?
He's got this.
Okay.
I know he's got this.
Well, it was 469 years earlier, actually, Cecil. But it was the Spanish colonization of Cuba.
Nailed it.
God damn it. You said the sex number.
Okay, so
How do you do a 469?
You have one other person in the bed ignoring you.
And that person's a 4 on the scale.
So yeah, or 2 ignoring it, we would do it as well. So Cuba was one of the islands discovered by Chris Columbus himself and quickly became the jewel in Spain's imperial crown. I'm not sure why every goddamn historical source uses exactly that phrasing, but they do, so I will too. Fucking jewel in Spain's imperial crown. Now, this worked out great for Spain, not so much for Cuba. So from early on in this relationship, the Cubans set about trying to throw off Spanish rule. In 1898, the U.S. decides that they want in on that shit, so they declare war on Spain in an ostensible effort to aid Cuba in its bid for independence. And to America's credit, once we won that war, we handed Cuba over to local leaders. To a Cuban-born American citizen. But we did let them run their own country. Provided that, most of their own kind. We had a bay that we wanted, and then they had to still make all the decisions that we wanted. But they got to. My point is, we hardly ever intervened in their domestic affairs, and when we did, it was sometimes at the Cuban government's behest. So,
yeah. America, the AH-64 Apache helicopter parent. That's what we are.
That's so much better than E pluribus unum, dude.
Okay, so you are totally in charge of all the decisions that you make that I like. Also, where do you think you're going dressed like that, you slut? That's
right. Yeah, that was the relationship. Okay. So for several decades, the Cuban government is somewhere between U.S. puppet and independent body leaning towards puppet. But then in 1952, a Cuban general by the name of Fulgencio Batista stages a military coup, deposes the president, declares himself president, cancels the upcoming election, and describes his new governmental system as disciplined democracy. As in, if you try to vote, he's going to punish your ass.
Yeah, Georgia's got a similar thing going on, actually. Yeah. Also, disciplined democracy, one of my favorite porn tabs. It's exciting.
No, it's all Hillary Clinton spanking non-voters. It's great.
Yeah. God.
This is also called 50 Shades of Democracy. Caliente.
From here, shit gets complicated. A bunch of different revolutionary groups start to bubble up around the country, and by the time any of them is strong enough to push back against Batista, they're also fighting with each other. But the one that came out on top was the 26th of July movement, which, despite its name, existed on all the days, and that was led by a young lawyer by the name of Fidel Castro.
Oh, that's the guy on my shirt who I've never read about or done any research on.
Oh my God, I hate you so much. It's not, you don't even have it right. God damn it.
So, for 3 years, Castro led a guerrilla army against Batista. That's not what a guerrilla army is.
Oh, ungasp.
You thought it was apes? Thought it was apes. Yeah.
For 3 years, no. So for 3 years, Castro led a guerrilla army against Batista, and the harder Batista came down on the revolutionaries, the more local support Castro got. By 1958, Batista's army's in full retreat, and he resigns, flees to the U.S. with a reported fortune of something like $300 million U.S. But once he was in control, Castro didn't, reschedule those elections that Batista had canceled or anything. Instead, he appointed himself prime minister. Well, no. So he proclaimed his new regime to be something called direct democracy, meaning, I shit you not, that he'll be in charge, but people can come directly to him and tell him what they think he should do.
How does that work? He's like, so everyone, I'm in charge of everything, but there's a suggestion box now, and it's right next to the guy with the machine gun. But don't be alarmed by him. He's quality control. Your suggestions are very important to us. Very important.
Yeah, do you have to stand on that one square that he controls with the lever that turns into a trapdoor? Like, what? Seriously? He's the only one whose novelty grenade pull pin complaint department take a number thing didn't use the novelty grenade.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. No, go ahead. It's one of those jokes. No, go ahead. Now, to be clear, Castro was a kind of a step up from Batista, or actually a pretty solid step up from Batista. Castro was way less tortury and murdery, but the U.S. didn't generally judge foreign leaders on shit like that. It tended to judge them more on the will they do what the fuck we tell them to scale, and Castro ranked pretty low on that scale. Now, this all came to a head when Castro ordered Cuban oil refineries that were controlled by U.S. corporations to process crude oil from the Soviet Union. Under intense pressure from the U.S., the companies refuse, so Castro nationalizes the refineries.
Okay. I have questions. Did Cuba have like the secret for magic oil refining that nobody else had? Like, Cuba's 7,000 miles from the USSR. I got to think they could build their own refinery, like on the same continent at the very least.
You would think, and you'd think, well, ours wouldn't be in Hurricane Alley then. Well, yeah, there's another. I don't know.
I just love that the U.S. was like, hey, oil profiteering is unethical, said us, the United States.
All right, so now this leads to a big tit-for-tat escalation where the U.S. keeps saying, hey, well, then we're going to stop buying X from you. And Castro's like, okay, then I'm going to nationalize Y. And pretty soon the U.S. is enforcing a pretty much total embargo against the island nation, and every remnant of an American asset therein has property of Fidel hastily scribbled across it.
I don't see your name on. Okay, never mind. All right, got it. Hey, stop licking all the oil. Stop it. Stop it. We'll send the fucking X-Men. We'll do it. We have X-Men.
Now, of course, the U.S. has a playbook for situations like this one. They dealt with unfriendly Latin American leaders before, and when I say dealt with, I mean that in the mafioso kind of way. So they go to the goddamn mafia.
What?
For realsies. In August of 1960, they call up, I guess, Cosa Nostra HQ, and they try to work out a deal where the mafia will assassinate Fidel Castro, his brother Raul, and Che Guevara, and in exchange, the CIA will guarantee them a monopoly on Cuban gambling, prostitution, and drugs.
I don't understand this. Like, some mafia guy's in that meeting with the CIA. He's like, oh, you don't know how to kill a guy? You just sneak up behind him and don't tell him. Don't tell him. You're getting a contract. Shut up.
How fucking embarrassing is it that the CIA has to outsource assassinations? Like, were they worried they were going to sully the pristine reputation of the CIA?
Right. Okay, Tom, to be fair, by the time they do get around to killing someone, even Oliver Stone knows they did it. So, you know,
All right.
they don't do great on their own.
So now, this mafia plan didn't go anywhere, but the idea of knocking off Castro would remain a U.S. obsession for decades to follow, and the first U.S. president to salivate over that possibility was Eisenhower. Castro rose to power in his second term, and all the embargo shit happened in 1960. That's Eisenhower's last year in office. In March of 1960, that's when the CIA puts forward the plan that would eventually grow into the Bay of Pigs invasion, and Eisenhower signs off on it right away. The objective is to, quote, bring about the replacement of the Castro regime with one more devoted to the true interests of the Cuban people and more acceptable to the U.S. in such a manner to avoid any appearance of U.S. intervention, end quote.
Yeah, American foreign policy. The thing that's best for you is also coincidentally best for us. You can thank us later.
Yeah, right.
You can thank us later.
Yeah, for fucking sake, this is like the least successful threesome sales pitch ever. It's like, okay, honey, so we'll like invite one of your friends over, maybe have a couple of drinks, really make the night about, it's about you. Who knows? You might find yourself. Like, discover some truths of who you are. And also be really great if you both took turns sucking my dick for a while. Yeah. That's just in there.
It's like that if the plan was to murder your wife and have the two friends you invited over blow bang you. But that's definitely the pitch.
Is that not? That's my point. Okay.
I think that's what he meant.
I thought it was baked in.
Yeah, it was implied, Tom. I agree.
So in August of that year, Eisenhower devotes a whopping $13 million to this operation. That's like $113 million in today's money. And the idea is to train up some Cuban dissidents in Guatemala. I thought that maybe the calculator that I was using was bullshit, but that actually doesn't work out to that. So they train up some Cuban dissidents in Guatemala. So they supply them with some weapons that the U.S. can at least theoretically pretend came from somebody else, and then they send those guys in to do the CIA's dirty work.
And then teenage Oliver North takes out a giant bag of guns. He's like, hey, here we go. Made in USB. There you go. Like these. Scratched off the
triangle.
A and made it into B.
So it's worth noting, by the way, that 1960 is an election year, and Cuba is a huge issue. Eisenhower is at the end of term number 2, so he's leaving one way or the other. The contest now is between his vice president, Richard Nixon, and famous rich guy's kid, John F. Kennedy. we're at the height of the Cold War at this point. Castro is seen as dangerously pro-Russian, and the American people want this threat 100 miles south of our border neutralized. Kennedy is hitting the campaign trail, bitching that the U.S. government is not doing enough to support Cuban dissidents. Now, Nixon,
That's pretty
meanwhile...
funny.
Right. Well, yeah, as I say, Nixon knows exactly how much the U.S. is doing, but he can't say anything about it because of all that plausible deniability that they're going for.
There should be like a David Attenborough special about the habits of the United States government. And here we see it shake off 3 years of stalemate hibernation, and it begins its frantic activity to pretend that it's useful.
You can even see the blame shifting as it walks. Yeah. So here's what's going on behind the scenes, though. The CIA has recruited hundreds of counter-revolutionaries, and because the State Department won't let them train on U.S. soil, they train them up in Mexico City and in Guatemala. Now, at first, they tried to trick even their allies into not knowing the U.S. was involved. Early on, the cover story was that this was all being financed by an anonymous Cuban millionaire. But when CIA operatives heard the recruits referring to said millionaire as Uncle Sam, they dropped the charade altogether.
All of a sudden, Yosemite Sam starts showing up at the meetings in a sombrero. Yo soy Tio Samuel. Real Spanish, Mexican, Guatemalan, Cuban.
Now, training or no, soldiers wouldn't be enough to pull this off. Cuba didn't have much of an air force or much of a navy, but it had an air force and a navy. So the CIA also had to hook the rebels up with something to counter that. Ultimately, they managed to secure a half dozen B-26s that were sanitized in Mexico, meaning that like anything that could be used to trace them back to the U.S. supplier was removed. And to be clear, it's a U.S.-made plane, but B-26s were sold all over South and Central America to various countries, so it was at least plausible that a well-financed group of rebels could get their hands on a few.
How? Like sometimes they misplace a few of them, just like shit.
Actually, yeah, they do because drug dealers and shit are constantly getting their hands on them, so the governments have to like sell them to like.
We should know how many there are and not give them to those guys, right?
Can't we just have a tally sheet in a little notebook somewhere?
Like, okay. That's a bomber.
We keep track of library books better than this.
Right?
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
There's just like that card that you got to sign out your B-26. Oh, man. It's due back
You come back in, you have to
stamp.
stamp the B-22's wing and something in order to...
Well, so to be
bad.
clear, though, like once some other country buys an airplane, we don't have any control with what they do with it, right? So, but they also put together this makeshift navy comprised of regular cargo ships with guns mounted on them, basically. But apparently, that's going to be sufficient to land the invading force and resupply them with ammunition once they'd secured a beachhead or two, or at least they would have been if the rebels had ever been able to secure a beachhead or two.
Well, we got through Einstein, James Dean. Brooklyn's got a winning team. Davy Crockett, Peter Pan, Elvis Presley, Disneyland. Join us after the break to see where this goes next.
Bardo, Budapest, Alabama, cruise ship, Princess Grace, Peyton Place, trouble in the Suez. Yes.
Laziest goddamn lyrics in the history of music.
I knew someone was going to bitch about it. I figured it was Noah, but I wasn't sure.
It's just an iconic song about all of American history put to the main. That's fine. That's fine.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. I really do apologize for the delay. We all had trouble getting in through that pull door today. Turns out you need to pull it.
I was pushing extra hard.
Yeah, me too.
Pull.
Me too.
Opposite.
Well, we at the CAA, we are the best of the best. That's our thing.
Sorry, sir?
Sorry, we at the CAA are medium with strong currents of white supremacist influence because of Project Paperclip. That's what we are.
Yeah,
more.
no, that
all
tracks.
right, that sounds about right.
We gave Nazis a bunch of money and new jobs.
They weren't good jobs. But this will be our toughest assignment yet. We are going to kill a guy.
Oh, that's good.
I don't even know. We know how to kill a guy.
Man.
Okay, but if we give him exploding cigar for the fatherland?
Okay? Good idea. Thank you, Dave Smith
Yes.
from Wisconsin, I think you said.
Yes, there is much cheese.
Okay,
there.
looking for something less cartoon villain, though. Anything less?
Tim Wilson, dumb 1960s guy who somehow ended up here because our admittance policy is based on how closely you match the wall paint. Why don't we poison a lady's vagina and have her fuck him?
Okay. Still very cartoony, though admittedly dumber and much pornier cartoon. So
And I'm a Russian spy.
that's fair. Okay. Yeah, thought that would be it.
Yeah, excuse me. I'm one of the hundreds of CIA members who will eventually turn out to be part of the KKK. What if we scrape the A out of all our army stuff and we just invade? Can we do that?
Because then they would be, they would think they were being like attacked by the Army.
Yeah, the Remy. The Remy, yeah.
I love it. Yes. Ha, that's
I'm in the KKK.
I'm a Russian spy still. Haven't changed from earlier.
I'm a Nazi.
Okay, we heard about our government filing the serial numbers off an airplane and hiding it behind a toilet tank in a crappy Italian restaurant on the other side of town. What happens next, Noah?
Little Rock, Pasternak, Mickey Mantle.
All right, so sometime in between the training up of all these rebel forces, the U.S. switches presidents. Kennedy won the 1960 election and assumed the presidency on
Allegedly.
January 20th of 1961. And by the time he did, he'd been brought up to speed on this operation. Dwight Eisenhower brought it up in one of the transition meetings the two of them had so that Kennedy would know that it had his approval.
but wouldn't it just be a good assumption that anything the previous administration started was approved by that administration? That's why they started it.
See, you sound like Chris Christie just before Trump fired him.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Well, no, actually, that's a really good question though, because a lot of times, like the CIA and the intelligence agencies, the army groups, they'll like try to treat the new president like a substitute teacher. Like, no, the last guy always let us do this on Fridays. You know, we were totally good. That's how they talked Trump into that. What it was a dumbass fucking thing he did in Africa right at the beginning. Anyway,
So wait, is it casual assassination Friday? Is that what they're
Yeah,
going
exactly.
for?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, we get to wear jeans and murder. We get to wear jeans and murder on Fridays.
and leave at 2:30. Yeah, exactly. It's a pizza party.
If you guys don't do it and I do it, I'm going to look stupid. I'm murdering a guy on Friday. All right. At 11:07, we're all going to drop bombs on Afghanistan. Okay.
So now Kennedy had been campaigning pretty fucking hard on the Cuba issue. He'd been publicly endorsing something very much like the Bay of Pigs invasion, a U.S.-financed rebellion of Cuban dissidents. Of course, strictly speaking, that's against international law, right? So they had to make it look like the U.S. wasn't directly involved, or at least they had to kind of make a show of pretending they weren't involved, but they still wanted everybody to know they were involved. But that ultimately would doom this operation, even if it hadn't come pre-doomed.
And if you elect me, I promise I will definitely not invade Cuba. Wink, wink.
Apropos of nothing, my head moves in the direction I get shot from. Just
Okay, yeah, because your
Jesus Christ.
brains explode out the other side.
God damn
These
it.
are the worst Kennedy impressions have ever been
damn.
done ever.
Yeah. Can one of you guys expose your back of your head and shoot your brains out? I just want to see if one of you can do it.
did Marky Mark get shot in the head? Not against that.
All right, so now I should point out, by the way, the Cubans know all of this shit is coming, and they pretty much know when. They were increasingly allied to the USSR at this point, and the Soviet intelligence networks had picked this all up long ago. In fact, an April 13th English language newscast from Radio Moscow predicted an invasion of Cuba headed by the CIA would take place within a week. The invasion took place 4 days later.
We're all like, fuck. All right. Do we push it back a week or like, I don't want to lose our Groupon. Like we put down a deposit for a bunch of stuff. Now we look
We're
dumb.
going to check out all those B-26s again? I don't think so. They won't let you check them out twice in a row. Now, okay, before they could land their rebels at the Bay of Pigs, they had to soften up their target a little. So they sent out 4 of their B-26 bombers, which had all been painted now to look like Cuban Air Force bombers. 3
Suicide
of them
bombers?
Well, check this out. I actually like this one. So 3 of them hit different airfields on the island and take out damn near half of Castro's modest air force. Now, this is important later. The crews of those bombers would go back and report much better results than that, which, again, would have doomed this thing if it hadn't arrived pre-doomed.
Yeah. Overpromise and underdeliver has always been a U.S. policy. Always.
Yeah, right. Well, in this case, not even in that order, but yes.
So what was this? Was this mission accomplished? Was this, you're doing a hell of a good job? Is this, it's going to be a great invasion? You're going to be tired of all the invasion? I don't even know which slogan anymore.
Exactly.
Just
okay,
how
but now
does the paint
that's-
affect this? Are they looking
okay,
at
so
it like they're like, no, it's got a cigar on the side. That's one of ours. Like what?
Okay, so yeah, no, that's actually the next paragraph here. So the 4th plane, and this bit I think is super clever, is diverted before it ever gets to Cuba. So before they launched the strike, they intentionally shot this plane all up, but in such a way that it would still safely be able to fly. And this one diverts north, requests permission to land in Miami. It's crewed by ex-Cuban Air Force personnel that were loyal to Batista. But the story that they sell is that they're part of a coup against Castro and that this dude and several other conspirators hijacked 4 of Castro's own planes to use against the regime. Right? Here's your plausible deniability. And like, that's not going to fool Cuba, right? They know that they're not missing 4 planes, but it's enough to muddy the waters when this video starts showing up and other countries are trying to figure out who's behind this shit.
Yeah, fun fact, we also sent a hockey team on roller skates through the middle of Havana singing "Oh Canada." The world didn't know what to think.
I just love that the Russians knew, so this whole thing is pointless. And we thought we were going to save it with a strong performance by our Army's Daniel Day-Lewis. Just like, oh, yeah, right. Let me tell you.
All right, so all of that happens on Saturday, the 15th of April. After a couple of diversionary feints, the invasion force moves in the middle of the night of the 16th and 17th.
It's just like one guy on the beach in fatigues just juking randomly back and forth.
Am I going to go left?
Spin
Am I going to go
move,
right?
spin move,
Bump and
spin
run? All right, so now the landing spot they chose was the Bahia de Cochinos, or Bay of Pigs, largely chosen because it's far enough away from major population centers to keep witnesses that could call out U.S. involvement to a minimum. They dropped forces on 3 beaches designated Blue Beach, Red Beach, and Green Beach, and these are major fucking operations. They're unloading tanks and medical tents, the whole 9. Problem is, they're not doing it fast enough.
Well, that's what you get when you hire a union. A lot of breaks.
Whoa, Tom. Someone isn't getting their Instacart this week. I'm just, I'm kidding. It's all of us. All of us aren't getting our Instacart.
All right, so see, again, the Cubans knew this shit was coming. Right? So on the advice of Che Guevara, they had basically armed the entire country. They said, hey, be on the lookout for CIA-backed invaders. So as soon as this amphibious landing starts, it's picked up by local militia. And yes, they can't do much more than harass this well-trained paramilitary force, but they can tell Castro where the fuck the landing's happening, which they do. So almost right away, the Cuban army springs into action.
This well-armed militia is Second Amendmenting so fucking hard right now. God, so
they
fucking
just
hard.
dream of this shit,
so
right?
fucking hard.
Okay, so the CIA knew all of that was going to happen, right? They predicted that they'd get spotted really quick. Cuba's a small fucking island, so it's not going to take long to muster your forces to wherever that landing happens to be. So part of the plan is that they've got several paratrooper teams that are going to drop in, and they're supposed to take control of major roads and block those off. But these drops are universally a fucking disaster.
Not a well-organized
Yeah, no, not in this case, no. So half the equipment is dropped in swamps and shit where they can't retrieve it. There's almost no ability to communicate. The paratroopers are way too spread out after the drop to organize fast enough. It's basically a shit show.
Just calling in on the radio, sir, my tank is in literal quicksand. I don't even... What the fuck?
I didn't even know that was
that's
real.
a real thing? Did you know quicksand's fucking real? What the fuck? What happened?
the USSR is watching all this unfold, just like, oh, we have overestimated the enemy. That was not.
Yeah, we wasted so much money on submarines, guys.
Yeah, well, they destroyed our federal government with tweets and a Facebook ad 4 years ago. So I think they have the level now.
Yeah.
That matters.
It just took them 60 years to figure it all out. Yeah, okay, so what's more, like I said before, the pilots in the preliminary raid exaggerated their success quite a bit. They overreported the number of planes they took out, like some out of pride, others out of ignorance, as apparently at least one of them took out a bunch of non-functional airplanes that were like up on concrete blocks or some shit.
What is that? They actually missed Cuba entirely, just bombed the shit out of a trailer park in South Florida. To just anywhere in South Florida.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. That was redundant. So yeah, but like much to the surprise of the amphibious assault, Cuba's got planes in the air pretty much right away to harass these ships. By 6:30 in the morning, they're like getting steadily strafed by the Cuban Air Force.
Hey, Dave, didn't you say you destroyed all those planes earlier?
Yep. Yeah, we did. They just got better.
No.
They're fine now.
Like a Tylenol. So the Cubans take one of the supply ships that's carrying the bulk of the rebels' medical equipment. They also lost the bulk of their radio equipment during the landings, so their commander could only communicate with the soldiers on his particular beach. And while most of the soldiers were landed before these counterattacks started, the ships that were supposed to resupply them suddenly started having mysterious mechanical problems and had to stay the fuck out of bomber range for really long periods of time.
I guess it's been U.S. policy to lose track of medical stockpiles for a long time, too. That's interesting.
Guy wants Band-Aids for his almost dead troops. Tell him to ask me nicely.
Right. All right, so at 11 o'clock local time, Castro jumps on the radio to tell the Cuban people that they're under attack and they all need to arm up and be prepared to push back the invaders. And I know before I started looking into this for the episode, I radically underestimated the size of this invasion. It's something like 1,400 people. They have a small Air Force and Navy. They have full-blown fucking tank battles as part of this. But ultimately, the Cuban forces gain the upper hand, and pretty quickly, they start pushing the invaders back even by the end of the first day. The fighting goes on for a couple of days, but it's clear right away that the U.S.-backed rebels are going to lose. At 2 p.m. on the 17th, the day of the invasion, Kennedy gets a telegram from Nikita Khrushchev basically telling him, hey, look, man, if U.S. forces enter Cuba, I'm responding with nuclear weapons. At that point, Kennedy backs down entirely and refuses to offer any additional help to the rebels.
I see your tariff. Raise the end of days. Yeah. Kennedy's just like, Mr. Khrushchev, do you accept backsies? You do? Fantastic.
Yeah, right. All right, so this is where it all falls apart. So basically, the CIA knew good and damn well that this plan, as they had presented it, probably would not work.
Who's got a better plan?
Well, okay, so they couldn't afford one, but their hope was that once there were shots fired and Kennedy knew that his international reputation was on the line, it would be super easy to talk him into doing whatever it fucking took to win. You know, like they did with Bush. Right? And to be fair, there's no fucking way Khrushchev was going to start World War III over this, but Kennedy surprised him. He pulled the plug, took the blame, and left the rebels hanging.
This was the international equivalent of starting a fight with a much bigger guy and then just hoping your big brother steps in at the last minute to save you, but with tanks. It's the same thing with tanks.
Well, but as long as it was your big brother's idea, yes, yeah. So it's hard to say how many people died in this invasion, or honestly, it probably isn't. It's hard to say that without reading more than just this Wikipedia article, which stubbornly refuses to give a cumulative total and lists several groups multiple times, making it hard to just add them all up. So 67 American-backed rebels were killed in action. Another 10 were killed by firing squad, another 10 on a boat trying to escape. 9 died in a sealed container when the Cuban government was shipping a bunch of prisoners to Havana all at once. And another 10 rebels and 4 Americans died getting shot down over Cuban airspace. So the Cuban army lost 176 soldiers killed in action, but the militias accounted for the lion's share of the losses. There were between 2,000 and 4,000 total casualties, though the article doesn't specify how many of those were killed. The failure severely wounded Kennedy's reputation and obviously made Castro all that much more suspicious of future U.S. intervention. It drove Cuba further into the Soviet sphere of influence. It affirmed Castro as a Leninist Marxist despite his former ideological flexibility, and it pretty much directly led to the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962.
Which was basically, okay, see your end of days, raise, also end of days. Guys,
right.
This game doesn't really work. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And by the way, according to most of the Cuban sources, this also cemented Castro's reputation with his people. Right? His revolution didn't have majority support until the Bay of Pigs invasion, but that drew the Cuban people together. And what's more, it earned Castro this iron, legendary reputation as the guy who beat the U.S. forces and sent them back into the sea.
I wonder if there were any countercultural Cubans that wore red shirts with General Patton's silhouette on them. I wonder if that happened.
If there were, they all took up roof diving soon afterwards.
All right, so afterwards, a lot of people looked into the whole process of organizing this thing in a desperate effort to A, figure out what went wrong, and B, figure out that it was somebody else's fault. So JFK commissioned a panel to look into it, and surprise, surprise, they found that it was pretty much all the CIA's fault. Right? The fact that Robert Kennedy was on the panel makes their findings hard to take seriously, though.
Well, serious enough to murder him afterwards. It's pretty serious.
So one interesting side note is that these later investigations into the debacle brought the term groupthink into public consciousness. In retrospect, every military expert that looked at these plans would look at them for like 3 seconds and say, well, yeah, it's going to fucking fail miserably. All your equipment's going to end up in swamps and shit. And yet, all the military experts involved in the planning managed to miss those various fatal flaws that were so glaring in retrospect. So the Bay of Pigs invasion was so fucked up that psychologists used it to identify a whole new means of being wrong.
Wow.
That's impressive.
And if you had to summarize what you learned in one sentence, what would it be?
Getting shot in the head probably helped out Kennedy's historical reputation.
Oh, man.
Allegedly.
Thank you, George Bush Sr.
Are you ready for the quiz?
Oh, please, quick before any more of that shit.
All right, Noah, what should we call the movie version of the Bay of Pigs invasion? A, Shaving Private Ryan. B, The Havanishing. B, Cuba 2, Sniper Cube. D, Fideliverance. Or E, Never Che Die.
All right, close strong, but you know what? I'm going to go with C, Cuba 2, Sniper Cube, because I don't even know what the fuck you're going for with that one.
Cube 2, Hypercube.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
So bad. Cube and Cube 2, you guys didn't watch those a bunch of times?
Anyway, I was right. Tom, do you have a question?
You were right.
Yeah, I got a
Yes.
question for you, Noah. Right or wrong, it literally doesn't matter. Noah, the Bay of Pigs was a military failure. Why? A, the U.S. forces were too slow. They really needed to get crackling. B, morale was low. Everyone kept ribbing the troops. C, they just didn't have the chops.
Oh, these are pig things. That's so good.
D, the soldiers needed to toughen up. They were too tender. Tenderloin,
Huh? And ribs.
The one didn't work
Pig
as
ribs.
good.
Interesting. I'm going to go with C, they don't have the chops, because chops are definitely an actual pig thing. So
Sure. Well, I mean, okay. The answer.
All right, no, I got one more for you. What is the Bay of Pigs invasion sequel going to be called? A, Speed 2, Cruise Chev Control. B, The Castronaut Farmer.
nice.
C, Gleaming the Cuban. Or D, High Fidelity.
Oh, awesome.
Fidelity is
Well
very
done.
good.
All right. Well,
High
I got to
Fidelity is
say,
very good.
because I gave Eli some shit for a really obscure goddamn movie reference. I'm
The Astronaut Farmer. It's called The Astronaut Farmer. Astronaut.
I was going to go with C, Gleaming the Cube, and the first time I've heard of Gleaming the Cube
Gleaming the
since
Cube, the
1993 or
Skate
something.
movie or
Yes.
a bike movie. It's some kind of movie with the
Bikes or
bikes or
skateboards?
skates. I don't know which
I
it's
thought it
bikes
was-
or skates.
I thought
It's
it was
one or
like,
the other.
It's one of those
Yeah,
two. Yeah.
skateboarding, I think. Yeah.
I think it was skateboarding.
Rollerblading. Anyway, yeah.
Heath, I think Khrushchev control is brilliant, so you win this week.
Thank you. I would like Tom next week. Let's have Tom do something.
Okay, well, Tom's gonna have to write out. Say, all right, for Tom, Noah, Eli, and Heath, I'm Cecil. Thanking you for hanging out with us today. We'll be back next week, but then Tom will be an expert on something else. Between now and then, check out our other podcasts at our website. And if you'd like to help us keep waging this war with the dollop stuff you should know and behind the bastards, you can make a per episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod. Or leave us a 5-star review everywhere you can. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, check out past episodes, connect with us on social media, or check the show notes. Be sure to check out citationpod.com. Stay the fuck home.
And so I said, look, we create a series of terror cells around the United States so that there's nothing to bring down in the first place.
Stop.
Man, that's a fantastic idea. That way we can continue to carry on white supremacist terror without ever having to create a public-facing organization.
Stop it. Stop
Right?
it.
This is going to be great.
It really is.
I'm going to write a report.
Yeah, you go ahead and write a damn report.
And I'm a Russian spy.
I will write a report. Very good.